Welcome to Collision, the podcast where we discuss the fun and sometimes complicated collision of real life and trusting God. If you're curious or confused about how to engage the world we live in, we hope our conversation here helps. Now, let's get into this episode of Collision.
Hey, well, welcome to Collision Podcast, where we talk about the collision of where faith and real life connect. I'm with Pastor Matt Manning, and we are really far away from each other today. Matt, tell us where you're at.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting in Israel, actually Jerusalem. You can kind of see behind me the cityscape. To this side is the Dome of the Rock in the old city of David. And so, yeah, sitting in Israel doing they call it a pilgrimage. You don't do tours of Israel. You're a pilgrim in Israel. So we're doing that, seeing all the sights and sounds. We've been here about a week. If I'm looking like super young, it's because I was in the Dead Sea today and I got my Dead Sea manicure on and feeling young and frisk.
That sounds awesome. So what are some of the sites that you've seen? And if you can share the site and kind of where it is in the Bible, like the significance of it, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah. So one of the cool sites today that we got to go to was the site of Jesus's baptism, or at least pretty close to it. So it's right at kind of the foot of Mount Nebo. It's where the Israelites would have crossed over the River Jordan. It's right there in that valley where John the Baptist ministered and where Jesus got baptized in, what is that, John chapter 4, I think it is. John chapter 4, I think it is. And so anyways, that was kind of an exciting thing today to be a part of and to witness and to be right there. Now, you didn't want to get in the water because the Jordan is like super dirty. And today we could call it like the Jordan Trickle more than the Jordan River because so much water gets pumped out of it, because we're in the middle of a desert and people need to drink. So, so that was one of the cool highlights today. First day we were in Megiddo, which if you're a fan of Revelation, that is Armageddon in Revelation chapter 16. And so we got to be in the valley. We got to be actually in the old city of Megiddo on this tell. And a tell is like this big hill that civilization after civilization kind of conquered. And then they mowed everything down and they built right on top of it. And so, first day we were in Megiddo. We also that day, and this was super cool for me, is we went up to the top of Mount Carmel, or as they call it in Israel, Carmel. And I got to do a 5-8 minute preaching for our group up there and to really speak of the significance of what happened like on that top of that mountain. Like we were standing there.
Wow.
So that was cool. And maybe the coolest of all the trip, because, every time you go to a place in Israel, there's like some varying degree of how accurate the site is, right? So you have the seaside, like this is tradition. So when you go and visit the Nativity, that's like the traditional site. Maybe that's the rock, maybe it's not. And then you have like the B, like this is like we're pretty close in this area, we're close. And then you have the A, which is like 100%. And so a few days ago, we went to the woman in the well, where Jesus met the woman of the well. And so the well of Jacob. And we were able to like stand at the well that Jesus and the lady had the conversation at, right? That's John chapter 4, actually. Yeah. And we were able to sink a bucket into the water of the well and then pull it up and all be able to have like a drink out of the well. It was kind of a surreal moment to be like, man, 2,000 years ago, like this is one of the hinge moments in all of scripture that happened right here and I'm standing in it.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So are all of these sites, are they all memorialized? Like there's a shrine or there's something, or like, is that is that a reality for all these sites, or are some of them kind of just still raw in?
Yeah, so it just depends. So like at the Church of the Nativity, that the Catholics have built over a lot of the significant markers of Jesus's life. So the Church of the Nativity is like completely built over. It's a huge church. You stand in line like you're in Disney World. And we forgot our fast passes, so it took us like an hour of standing in line. And then you go down into this like little cave area because, when we think of stables or where animals are kept, we think of like an American barn.
Yeah.
That's not what it was in Israel. In Israel, think of a cave, like legitimately a hole in the ground. You walk down into a cave. That was a stable. So that's one of like the significant things of coming to Israel is you see things and you go, oh, that's what it is. So Jesus was born in a cave. So you actually have to like descend down these stairs and you get to the bottom and there's like this 14-point star that's on the ground. And then there's a hole about this big and you can feel the rock, and everything else around it is like enshrined and memorialized. So you certainly have situations like that. And then you have like in Gedi, where David had the opportunity to kill Saul in First Samuel, and then doesn't take it, right? Just cuts off his cloak. So we were right there today at the spring of En-Gedi where all this happened, and that is completely nature. There's yeah, there's nothing in front of it. We went to the shepherd's fields, is what they're called, and the shepherd's fields, they're still used by shepherds today. And this is where the angels would have had the conversation with the shepherds, to announce Jesus's birth. And there's a church there memorializing, the spot, even though we don't know where that spot would be. But all around it is a cave system that you can actually dive into, and they're basically untouched.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, so there's some places that when we go in, when we're going in, we tell the people that we're with, like you have to work really hard to remove 2,000 years of history.
Yeah.
And you're going to stick your hand in the hole in the ground, right? And that's going to be the manger. And so, so there's a little bit of that you have to take care of. And then there's some that you just go into, and this is the way it was probably 2,000 years ago.
That's really cool. That's really cool, man. So how does, so you've been there almost a week.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing these sites, how do you keep your mind kind of fresh and alert? Because I know from past experience, you travel through anywhere, and after a certain point, you kind of have sensory overload. How do you kind of stay present and kind of, experiencing what God wants you to experience through all of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, one is, the Nuggets didn't help. The Nuggets, the games are on at 3:30 a.m. And I just want you to know that I watched all of them.
Nice.
So that doesn't help with the freshness. But overall, I would say it can get to a little bit of sensory overload. One day, I think it was the second day. Let me just look at my notes real quick. So the second day, we did baptisms on the Jordan River up by Galilee. We went to this place called Beth Shean, which is an old Roman city that is unbelievable. We went to the Basilia of Annunciation. That's where Mary received, it would have been like Mary's house, if you will. That's where she would have been with the angel. And let me tell you, that Basilia, which a Basilia is just a church that the Pope says is special. That's what a Basilia is. And so, and this Basilia, it was beautiful. Like, you walked in and it was breathtaking. So we were at the Basilia, and then we went to the well there because Mary would have had the angels would have announced either at her house or the well. And so we kind of know where Mary's house would be. So that was like a general area, but we definitely know where the well is, there in Nazareth. And so we visited the well, and then we went from the well to Cana, where Jesus performed his miracles, turning water into wine. And then our last stop was at Magdala that day, which is a fairly new finding. It's a city that Mary Magdalene was from, and where Jesus healed the woman who was bleeding for 12 years. Both of those happened in that city. They just founded in 2009. So that
Wow.
was day 2, right? So yeah, there's quite a bit of traveling and jumping around, and I think like the two things that that have helped me, both in the trip prior and this trip, is one, getting enough sleep, but then two, every night, I just have a little travel log, and I just write down everything that I saw, the feelings that I experienced, and it's just kind of like a brain dump right into onto this page, and then from there it can really, you know, be refreshed for the next day. My wife Sarah is with me on the trip, so every day when we wake up, we have a little devotion of one of the places that we're going to visit that day, just as a way of preparing our hearts and mind. And then honestly, every day I'm praying for the group that we're traveling with is 43 people, that every day that God would give us a sense of refreshing and renewal, and
Yeah.
make that happen. And so that's, yeah, so that's the way it's happening. Today and yesterday we called it quits a little bit early. So we were back at the hotel by today by like 4:30, and most of the afternoon was play in the Dead Sea. So people are feeling pretty good. And then the other thing is, everywhere we go, like, the food is amazing. So I eat like 6 desserts every night, because I'm walking like 15,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
So a little bit of dessert ain't gonna hurt anybody.
Yeah. That's so cool, man. So how does the climate and the general culture of Israel kind of affect you kind of living in Colorado and in America? I mean,
Yeah.
how does it help, like, make you see the world and maybe think about your life differently?
Yeah. So, when it comes to Israel, and seeing the sites that you see, um, it really changes your perception, I think, of how we read the Bible, right? We have, like, and no fault of our own, we have a very Americanized lens in which we view the Bible, right? And so coming to Israel and experiencing all of the sights and the sounds, and you drive through the desert that Jesus wandered through, and it's legitimately 80 miles of desert, like, just mountains with nothing growing on them, valleys with nothing growing on them. So you see that and you're like, wow, like this is legit wilderness, as they would call it. And then I think from like a cultural standpoint, to experience the culture of Israel, um, and the way that people kind of interact, that's still part of today, helps change a little bit of um, perception of 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 the way that we read the Bible. And so, for example, in that, there's still shepherds today. There's still they're called the Bedouins, and they're desert nomads is what they are, and they're still shepherds, and they're still shepherding on the hillside. They're still wandering the desert. They still live in tents, and so and that's part of the culture here of Israel. It's a people group here in Israel, and they date back to, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of years. These people have been doing it, and so like you actually get a real picture of what David's life might have been like as a shepherd.
Yeah.
And you see that today. And you also just see, like, in Israel, the Middle Eastern view of faith is much more communal than typically the way that we handle that. And so that's there. And then, the Middle East conflict that's going on since Genesis is real. Like today, the tour guide warned us like 3 or 4 times when we were at the Jordan where Jesus was baptized. There was ropes that you could get in if you wanted, and it was super dirty, so you wouldn't want to get in. But if you went past those ropes, the Jordanians actually have a command to shoot on site, right? So he's like, anybody want to get in the water? And nobody, no, we don't. No. We're good, right? But you get up near Lebanon and everything's barbed wire and electric fence. So yeah, so the Middle East relations are real as they were in the Bible, and the anxiety around it.
So the sites you're seeing, does it feel very Jewish, or does it feel very Catholic in kind of how it's being celebrated and kind of the culture there?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because only about 1% of the population in Israel is Christian. So you have about 25% Jew, 25% are Muslim, 45-ish% are secular.
Wow.
And then you have a few other things, and then 1% or so is Christian. And so a lot of the places that you visit, the way that I would say it is that you experience them either as Catholic churches or as national parks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so like En-Gedi is a national park. Masada is a national park. Trying to think up north that we went. Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus asked Peter, who do the people say that I am? That's a national park. And so the national parks are very much still together. This is about what it looked like. So, Caesarea Philippi is one of my favorite places to visit. And you walk up, and on the mountainside is still to this day all of the cutouts where they would place the idols, right? So you had the god of Pan, you had the god of Baal, you had the Asherah, all there, and they were personified as idols, and then they were placed into these displays that were carved into the rocks. Those displays are still there. And then to the left of all the displays is this cavern that in the summer months, water would flow out of it. And in the winter months, the water would all be sucked in. And so for the people during Jesus's time who were pagans, this was the literal gate of hell. This was Hades. This was the gate. And so when the water got sucked in, the demons, the evil spirits would get sucked into, they would go in home, if you will. And then when the water started coming out, that's when they would flood back into the world. This is what they believed. And so this was the literal gates of hell. And the pagan people, they would travel there with their firstborn sons, and they would stand there, and the altar still exists today. You can still see it. They would stand there and they'd hold their babies up, and then they would cast them into the gates of hell as a sacrifice to Baal and Pan and Asherah. And so all this is kind of going on, all this is happening, and you walk there, and all of that still exists today. None of it's been changed. And so you're there, and it is just like this sinking feeling of like realizing what happened here, and that Jesus led his disciples, and it is no way easy to get to. Like this was an intentional thing that Jesus did, and he's standing there before Peter, and he says, "Who do you say that I am? And who does the world say that I am? And then who do you say that I am?" Right? And when Peter answers, "You're the Christ," he says, "Man, that's amazing. You're the rock. And what you testify today, not even the gates of hell," which, by the way, are right next to me.
Wow.
Won't even be able to prevail against it. And so that's a national monument. So it's still all there today. Like you can walk up and you can see all that.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of the things that you see here that like you go, oh my goodness, like the significance of that moment. Of that moment in that place, like all of a sudden it becomes real and tangible, and it's like an image that you'll never be able to unsee.
Yeah. Super cool. Well, hey friends, thanks for listening today. Really our desire is to help people know and grow in the fullness of life, the flourishing that God wants for us to experience. So we experience that here in Denver, Colorado, as we worship God together and as we grow as followers of Jesus and live our lives here. But an experience like this might be something that is on your horizon. As something to stimulate the awareness of your faith. It doesn't change your position with God. God doesn't love you more if you go to Israel or not. But
Right.
but for each of us, different experiences in our life, God uses them to grow us. So, man, it sounds amazing, Matt. I hope to go in the future and see these things, and kind of get beyond just my Bible knowledge of all these stories and see the geography and the smell and the feel of these places, which just make it that much more real in our lives.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We'll clear your calendar for June 2025.
Boom.
All right, man.
All right, guys.
Hey, have a good week.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, and for you guys, thanks for listening. And you can find other great resources on our website, crossroadsabc.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll hook up soon. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Collision. This podcast is a production of Crossroads Church in Thornton, Colorado. For more excellent content, please visit crossroadsabc.com.